mic. So let's start that again. Cut that out of the final. So you can laugh at me now, and we'll take care of that later. So I have my friend Jim here, who's helping me with this production, and if something is not happening, he's going to jump in. I've given him direct permission to interrupt me if I've not been clear about something, if I haven't given a detail, if I've gone too fast through something. And Jim is monitoring the live stream on YouTube, so that if you have a question and you want to use the chat on YouTube, he'll be gathering questions, feeding them to me as we go through this. Okay, so I'm going to start that again. And just so you know, just for my own company, I've done over 50 books in the last year, and then I've helped countless other authors in terms of I've edited for them, and I've become known as somebody who's fixing audio for people. So they have something they think is going to have to be thrown away, and I've been able to use RX4 to take out noise, take out background noises, anything from elevators to sirens to dogs to constant hiss and AC noise and more and more and more. And over time, I learned a lot about the tools. So what we're going to do today is go through, and I have 3 examples that I'm going to show in approximately 20 minutes. What that means is I will not show every detail about the process, nor will I show every noise nor every possibility. The tools have depth, and I'm going to show you a subset, hopefully give you some good information. Then we'll take questions off the live stream. And then things that we don't get to, please be sure to ask the question, even if you see other people asking too many questions, because if we don't get through it on this show, we'll do it again in a couple of weeks, and we'll pick up where we left off and add on top and build on that. Okay, so every time I switch screens from you and me talking directly over to the software, there's somewhere between a 5 to 10 second lag where it goes dark. Don't think the stream is dropped. That's just part of the process. I'm going to switch over to RX4, show you our examples, and then we'll be moving on from there. Okay? And the goal of all this, always, if I'm coaching somebody, teaching somebody, or working for myself, it's higher quality in less time. Now, less time is easy because I can lower the quality bar. But that's not what I'm talking about. I want less time with higher quality, and that's what I teach other people, and that's what I'm looking for in everything we do here. So here we're going to look at RX4. I'll shift over. Jim, did I miss anything there that I should have mentioned before as I switch?
No, you didn't. You didn't miss anything, Don. Go right ahead. We can hear you loud and clear, and we're looking forward to this. Go ahead.
Okay. So I have a couple different examples here, and let me close some windows. By the way, normally when I'm working, I'm going to be working on a dual screen monitor. And at the same time, I'm going to have this little window over here closed, so I don't see them. But I know where most of them are, and if I miss something, I can't remember it, then I'm going to hover over it, and the mouse will show me what the tool was. But for this demo, I'm going to leave this open, but I just need you to know I usually have it closed. I want more real estate, the more screen we have. So here's one example. This is a pretty cool example. Now, I'll play it first.
There was no hatred there. It's just names we call each other.
Now, I don't know if you can hear that over your stream, and I'll do something to give you a better example here in a second. But in the background, it's going dun 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 dun. I'm going to play it one more time.
There was no hatred there. It's just names we call each other.
And let me isolate a couple of those. First, I can isolate it full frequency spectrum. You can kind of hear that a little bit
hatred
in
there. It's just names.
It's also here. Okay, now that's occurring the whole time. So some of you, depending on your hearing, and I should go over this, just let me stop for a second. Depending on what you've done in the past in terms of hearing, there's going to be sounds behind sounds. And if you're a musician, what you end up doing over time is learning to listen to the band, so the singers up front and the drummers in the back. And when you're mixing the music, you make decisions about where everybody is in the mix, from the front, meaning the things people hear the most, all the way to things that are in the very background that only people, that it creates a feel, but not necessarily something that everybody hears. And when we're denoising audio, we have this very fascinating thing where many people are not hearing the noise in the background behind the words. It's masked. And it's actually the way MP3 is designed to work. That's why they're 10% of a WAV file, because it's taking out the things that are behind, and therefore it can get away with some certain things. In these noise examples, some people aren't going to be able to hear all the noise, but like music, things in the background create a feel. And what they say is, boy, Jim's audio sounds so good. And Don's is okay, but Jim's is so much better. And some of it is the feel and things he's doing in the background that make it feel better and sound better to the average person, but they don't know why. So in this example, let me go back to the example here. I'm switching over, you'll see it switch. This is in the background behind this whole audio, but I'm just playing a little bit of it here.
It's just...
Okay, now let me isolate a little bit of that. Now there's a great tool here when you're doing this that will allow you to isolate things. And now all I'm doing is playing the lower end. Now I live on this tool. I have a tendency to stay here, and this is called the time frequency tool. And the time frequency selection allows us to select just a little bit of the audio and play what's inside that selection. And this is gold when you're looking to dig out sounds. You are going to use this tool over and over, and then I combine that with the loop tool in order to loop over a section. And I just have that turned on almost all the time. You don't have to. Every once in a while I'll turn it off, but for me it's almost always on. And then visually you can do some things to zoom in, because sometimes, especially when you're in stereo, I really want to see this a little clearer. So what I'm going to do is there's a tool here called Zoom to Selection. I'll click on it, and now these are much, much easier to see. And then I can move that around. Then they're here. And there it is. That's it. Now, you may need headphones on. You may need to have good speakers, but nonetheless, that sound is there and it's playing. And if I'd shut up, you might be able to hear it. Okay? So that's one example. We're going to take care of that one in just a minute. And then I've got a couple others over here that's some dialogue. And let me go to my simpler one first. So I have a simple one, and that's going to be over here. And yeah, there we go. I'll zoom in for you so you can see it. And listen to this little bump that's here.
Jealousy stabbed her heart as the
Now it's going to be heart bump, heart bump. Okay, so this is kind of a thumpy thing, and I'm going to take that and isolate that for you and play it over and over, and you'll hear the little bump.
Stabbed her heart as the
Can you hear it? It's in the R. Stabbed her heart, R, right in the R.
Stabbed her heart as the
So it didn't get stabbed in the heart, got stabbed in the R. And we'll take out that one for you. And then I have a much more complicated one that sounds about the same, but is actually not the same. And here it is here.
What about our friend there?
And it's what about our friend bump there?
What about our friend there? What about our friend there? What about our friend there? Friend there, friend there, friend there.
Okay, so hopefully you can hear that. If you don't have on headphones, you may not, but it's okay. So those are the three we're going to take out, and then we can do some more beyond that. Jim, anything that I'm missing there? Anything coming in on the stream that I need to pay attention to?
Not yet. You're getting, somebody is very impressed with what you're doing. Lori is exclaiming, "Oh my God, she's loving this." Go ahead.
Okay. It's nice to have a fan club, although I'll tell you what, I can't monitor that while I'm doing this at the same time, but I do appreciate the feedback. So here's what we're going to do. Now,
a twinge of jealousy stabbed her heart as the...
So it stabbed her heart. Let's stab their heart. Let's save this woman from re-recording. Okay, and that's really what was going to take out of this one. Now, a couple things that are important. Visually, you can see this if you know what to look for without any problems. It's obvious to me before I ever play it that there's a problem coming up, and you will be that way too. Let me zoom in a little bit on that. It's right in here, and you can see it. But most people, unless they've been using this a while now, there's a few of you out there that have been using this for a long time, so you already know all this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. When we get to the more complex example, maybe we'll have something for you, but there's a lot of you that are very experienced with this. I've just changed the scale. The frequency scale defaults to something called Mel. Now, I don't know who Mel is, okay? He's not my friend, but I do kind of like him because he's where I stay most of the time. But the frequency scale, when I'm doing something on the low end, I'm going to almost always switch to what's called log. And in log, you can see this problem sitting right here. Now this is a two-phase problem. If I'm dealing with thumps, I'm going to show you the lazy man's way to riches here. And that is almost always in audio, if you're doing an audiobook, if we're doing narration, there are certain things that just don't make it through to the end product. And I am a stickler for getting those sounds out of the audio right at the beginning. So I have a couple presets here, and I'll do a high pass, low pass, and I just happen to know on an audiobook there's certain things that won't make it through. And so before I do anything, I'm going to process through this whole file. Watch this bottom section here. Boom, look at all that. That's pretty much gone. Did you catch that? I'm going to put it back. Now, let me highlight that for you. So if you're watching, you see all this right here. You can see that on the screen. That's going to go away. And all I did was I cut out things below about 90-ish on this thing. And we can argue whether it should be 80 or 90 or 100 or whatever. It depends on the voice is the real answer to that. It is not one setting, but that's a pretty safe setting. So what I've done is I've eliminated things, but listen to this. Still there. That means I can tell you, see her right there? Now a couple other things. This is a bonus. Some of you like this other view over in the spectrogram, and that's where you can take and change this color scheme and go to this multicolor stuff. Now personally, let me highlight what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it back here to the regular standard. I prefer the regular standard. Now, who cares? What do you like is more important than what I like. What gives you the best results is where you should be. There's no magic in what I like. It's what I'm most used to. I do think I see more details in it, but some people do like this other one, and I highly recommend that you experiment and find what you like and go with that. So some people do like this multicolor, and I don't think it's bad. I just think this is clear, and what we're looking for, this is right here. And watch when I switch it to this other color. Okay, for some people, they see that clear. That's okay. I just want you to know. Now, a bonus. If you're sitting here and you can't see something, but you're hearing it, try switching the colors. Also try, I've said this in previous ones, I can change the intensity scale over here on the right, and by doing that, sometimes things become clearer. And sometimes you think, oh, just making it brighter works. That is not always the case. Sometimes less brightness is actually better. Less is more. All right. So if I go right in here, I'm going to almost always take my little lasso tool, and I'm going to take right here, and I'm going to play that. I'm going to isolate it. I've got it in loop mode. And there's two buttons here. If you've been on my other RX seminars, you know I live on this play frequency selection. Okay, now that's also a tongue twister to practice your narration, play frequency selection, that you can say over and over again in your car when you're bored. And then there's the normal one. So you do want to go and mess around and understand between these two. If it's not clear to you, get in our group, Audio Rescue, and ask questions about that, because this is gold. Now, can you hear that?
I can hear that.
Good. Okay, it's kind of faint. Now, there's a couple things we can do. Most people are going to go ahead and do this. They're going to run over, and they're going to go to Spectral Repair. And Spectral Repair is a great tool for doing this. In this case, I know from experience, I'm going to run over and use my gain control. And I even have some presets. I have something, this is very exotic, it's called thump removal. Now, this is nothing. All it is I set this to -35, and all I did, I'm just going to turn it down by 35 dB. There's magic in that. It is exactly 35.83 dB. Do not put it at 35.33 dB. You know, I'm totally being facetious with you. You could be plus or minus about 5 dB there, and it won't matter. And you can experiment with it. You could probably get away with 30 on some. You can get away with 35, 40. But watch what happens. I process this through. I highlight it, and then I process, and then I play it back.
Stabbed her hard as the men stabbed her hard as the
Okay.
stabbed her hard as the.
So I still can hear it in there. So what does that mean? Well, the magic is undo. It means that my selection was not quite big enough to get all of that one. And there's a couple things that will happen. In some thumps, I am going to go to Spectral Repair, but in about 80% of them, I can get them by just turning the gain down. And they're different processes, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my selection bigger. I'm going to check it. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get it out here. And let's see.
Her hard as the met. Her hard as the met.
I still can hear that.
Her
now,
hard as the.
over YouTube and over the live stream, I'm not 100% sure you hear the details there, but it's still there. And so while I can get it 80% of the time with just that simple technique where I take and I highlight the section there, and then I go ahead and reduce it, and then I am done. That works. If I don't get it, then I go over here to Spectral Repair, and I get a little more accurate with it. Let me undo that. I also will try, watch this, because sometimes I'm not zoomed in enough, or sometimes it's a more complex one, as this one goes much, much higher. You can see that, how that one is going high, and because of that, I need a different tool. I can't just use that. So watch this. I'm now going to switch over to this tool, time and frequency, and I'm going to select the whole thing here. And I'm going to take this, and first thing, my go-to tool. Now there's another tongue twister for you. You can add that to the other one, time, frequency, selection, go-to tool. And I'm going to use attenuate, and I'm going to try that with my standard, my default, and see how that does. And in this case, it's improved, but it's really not great. And I can tell you, I'll undo that. Now I'll go to the one that will actually work, and then I'll explain why. So we now do this, and watch this. Now I'm going to loop that for you like I was doing earlier, because when you loop it, now here's a little key. If you're going to listen back to something, don't start right on it. I mean, that is about here. Yeah, that's okay, but I want to have a little bit of a run-up to it. It allows your ears to get tuned to the sound, and then when the bump comes in, to instantly recognize I got it or I didn't.
Stabbed her hard as the stabbed her hard as the stabbed her hard as the stabbed her hard as the.
Okay, now that's darn good. Now here's the thing about that. It's not perfect, and if I sat here for another 30, 40 seconds, I could probably get it perfect, but I'll let you know that that was the technique we used in this particular thump. I tried the gain, wasn't enough in this instance. I then went to Spectral Repair. We went to attenuate. That's usually going to work, and there's a few cases, and the reason it does not work to do gain in this one or attenuate is because that particular thump goes much higher into the audio, into the words, than the other things that I'm going to show you in just a minute. So when you have something that's more complicated like that, you are going to have to go in and use Spectral Repair and switch over and try attenuate first. That's going to be, I don't know, 70% of the time I can get it with that, maybe more. And then sometimes I'm going to hit replace, and that will deal with it and take it all out. In the real world, when they're playing along to this and they're 5 minutes into the story,
Tinge of jealousy stabbed her heart as the men
they will just never hear that little glitch. If we're sitting here in pristine environments, we may or may not hear it, but the bottom line is, you know, it's gone. So let me go to the next example here. And Jim, anything I need to talk about there?
Yeah, well, we have a couple of questions coming in, but perhaps you want to go ahead with this first, and we'll give you the first question.
Okay, let me go ahead and get this other one. This is actually, I kind of did this backwards. This is the simple one.
Our friend there, our friend there, our friend there, our friend there, our friend there.
Okay, so guess what I'm going to do first? Oh, yeah, it's hard to hear you, but I heard somebody shouting. You said you're going to grab the Lasso Tool. I heard that. And you're going to go ahead and you're going to highlight this. And then you're going to take
Lasso Tool.
Yeah. And there's that noise there. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my thump removal, and I'm going to process that.
What about our friend there? What about our friend there?
And now, if I went a little too far on that one, see?
What about our friend there? What about our friend there?
Hear that? Hear that? Hear that? So, undo is your friend. And I'm going to do it now. Lasso Tool. It's very interesting. By the way, as soon as I let go of the tool, it will complete my selection area. So I can go in here and I can, it's a free-form tool. And so I can just kind of get a couple sides and then it'll get the rest. Kind of hear it there, it's subtle. And let's see if we
What about our friend there? What about our friend there?
Okay, so that's
What about our friend there?
Another little piece in here, and I have a couple of options. I can go in here and just draw it in. Yeah, take that guy, process him out.
What about our friend there?
Okay,
What about our friend there?
Dramatically better. So here, I can tell you just from experience, most of the time you can go in, you can see one that's there. That's too quiet already. And you can, if there's one that's loud, you can hear it while you're testing it here. None of these are loud enough to get. That one's darn close. And in production, when you're there, people won't hear it in context. If you're in a pristine environment, then they can hear some things. But for most people, you can tune that just a little bit. I may have to go up just a hair more or a hair less, but that's the process. Use the Lasso Tool and go through and pull that out, and then just simply dump it in terms of the gain, turn it down, and you're done. Now, Jim, questions? What do we have coming in there on the stream?
Okay, first of all, I just wanted to. Can you hear me now? Okay, I just wanted to tell you, Cecilia is very impressed with what you just told us. Wow, that's awesome, she's saying. Now, we have a question from someone who wants to know a little bit more about the learn function with Denoise. Don, can you explain what that learn function does and how that works?
I can. Let's see. I'm going to make sure. Are you seeing my screen now, Jim?
I am, yep.
Okay, then we'll switch over to the learn function. We'll go over here because this other one, let me get rid of my windows here. And so if I'm on a dual monitor, you know, then I've dragged this one over to my other monitor while I'm doing it, so I have my whole screen. So learn is what we're going to have to use in this other example. So to give you an idea here, just let me play it again.
Hatred.
You hear that, I hope? And it's just going to, we go back to this, and we have this little thing here. Okay, so you can hear that, and that's just all throughout it. So this we're going to have to use the denoiser, and we're going to have to use learn. What learn is going to, now learn is kind of a contradiction. I'm going to unscreen share here for a second. We'll talk about a concept. What learn wants to do is learn wants clean noise. And that's like jumbo shrimp or plastic glass or something like that, where you know the clean noise is kind of an odd thing. But what it means is I want noise that does not have any of the things I want to keep in it. So anything I want to keep, it just means I don't want any dialogue in it in our case. And I need to find things between words that I can put together and let it learn what I'm identifying as, quote, noise. RX can't tell what is noise and what is not in the generic context unless we're on the dialogue denoiser, and there it can make some educated guesses. Now, it always does better when we train it specifically, because guessing, it's a very difficult mathematical problem for them to get right in 100% of the cases. So in this case, it works pretty well, but if you train it, you can train it and it'll do some amazing things. So let me show you, for example, how it works here. We'll train it, and training is pretty awesome. Okay, so there you should be seeing my screen now. Now, what most people are going to do when they train it is they go ahead and find the place here like this, and they're going to train it. Now, in this case where it's kind of severe, I'm going to actually do something totally different, and I'm going to go through and use the time frequency selection, and I'm going to just find these sounds that we want to get rid of. There's one there. I'm also going to hold down the shift key, and through doing that, it's going to allow me to add extra things in here. Okay, so now it's training on those. There is a way to adjust those a little bit. I want only the noise sound, and in this case, I'm going to actually do something that most people don't do, and that's going to be training it on a subset of the total frequency range. You notice I'm not selecting anything up top here, because in the first time, I want to try getting rid of this noise that's behind all these words, and I'm going to go over here and choose learn, and now it did something very interesting. It learned just these sections here, and it also asked me a question here. It says that the noise profile is not captured at some frequencies. Complete it. My answer is no. Shut the heck up. I know what I'm doing. That's kind of what we want to tell it. Okay, so that's what you tell it. You tell it, I know what I want. And that means don't fill in. I mean, if I had chose yes there, it would have gone up and looked at these upper frequencies. But you notice we have now done something where we trained it just on the lower frequencies. We're below 1K. That's exactly what I've selected here. If I were being hyper precise, I might bring it down to here. And if you were doing this for real, I'm going to I just brought it down just a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is take that and I'm going to ask it to run it. And you watch what happens to all this audio when I process it through. It's going to go through here, and I have the whole, I don't know what I have, 20, 40 seconds worth of it, and it's doing some stuff. And now if you look in the background, some of it is gone. Now, I left it on whatever I had on the default the last time. It's kind of dumb. It's really not a lot. It didn't take out a lot, but that's okay.
No hatred there. It's just names we call
Okay,
it.
so that's not enough. Control undo, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to retrain it. I've already got it trained, excuse me. The one thing I'm going to do is take the preview and adjust my reduction and get some real reduction out of it. And we may even, this is what we do if we're going to deal with more complex examples. We'll decouple these two. That may be beyond what we get through today, but there is a way to do some things on specific noise types. But in this case, I'm going to leave them together. But what I want to do is experiment in the preview.
It's just names we call each other because we have no meaning to put to it.
Okay, I don't know if you can tell, but that's already almost all gone. I normally wouldn't do probably 20. That's just too much for me. I probably would max out somewhere around 15 and do multiple passes. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start, and I'm going to try one at 20. Sometimes you can get away with it, especially when we're doing these subsets. Let me go ahead and run this, and I'm also going to make sure that we're gating here a little bit closer to the middle. And now we're off and we're running, and let's see how this does on this particular example. This is a tough one because we've got dialogue and we have noise, and now what you can see is in the background here, it's taken out something.
It's just names we call each other because we have no meaning to put to it.
Now, I don't know if you can tell on your end, but that's pretty spectacular.
There was no hatred there. It's just names we call each other because we have no meaning.
Now, let me switch back and forth. While that's, let me loop a little section there. Drill down, and you can even see in the audio where it's worked on the noise that was down in the bottom of the audio scale. And I will do a second pass, which does everything, meaning I deal with this noise that's sitting up here as well. But I just wanted to deal with getting the noise behind it first, and then we can move on to the other one. So let me do, but I want you to hear this to make sure that you heard that it's actually doing what we said it was going to do. We'll loop that there.
Would call me a bushy and I'd call her Daki, but there was no hatred there. It's just names we call each other because we have no meaning to put to it.
Okay. Now, is that perfect? No, nothing's perfect, but it's darn good there. And then what I'd have to do now is I would retrain it and train it on the whole spectrum and then let it see what it gets there. And you can see that it doesn't have anything to do in the lower end, and so I don't need to go down so much. Just on the upper end, 8, 10, 12. Once I get above 12, I'm usually going to be doing multiple passes, and I'd let it go ahead and take the whole thing here and just process that through. And what you're going to see is all of this noise that's up at the top is going to go away. And if you overcook the stuff, you'll end up with some artifacts in there. And then there's there's another minor thing that happens. Once you clear out the noise, now people hear some things that were in their audio that they didn't realize was there. Sometimes they'll accuse you as an engineer of actually overdoing it and giving them more noise. And it's like, well, no, it was really there, but you didn't hear it before.
Would call me a bushy and I'd call her Daki, but there was no hatred there. It's just names we call each other because we have.
Okay, now I don't know how it's translating over YouTube, but that's pretty spectacular. And frankly, if I sat here and monkeyed with it for 5 minutes, if it was important enough, I could get it even more pristine because I would dial these in and I would change and get them exactly at the levels I need to meet the specs and make sure that they match well, and there's a little bit of noise in there that kind of bothers me that I would go back and do. But the principles that are important for us are that you can do multiple passes, and you should if you have a tough problem. You can do parts of the spectrum, and you can put together selections so that if you don't have audio, if you don't have enough here, you can hold down the shift key and you can add some more that is over here in this section as well, and you can go ahead and go throughout your audio and put these together and train the thing on multiple selections, and you're looking for the stuff that's just noise, and if you can find it, even in little bits and pieces, then RX can probably take it out for you. And I will tell you, we'll do an advanced section someday where we go through every possible setting here, because there are moments where, if depending on the type of problem I'm dealing with, I may be using these things decoupled. And then there's a whole thing that I haven't even talked about today which is a reduction curve, because something like this, I would have gone in and taken this curve, and I would have dropped this here, and I would have dropped this here. I will just tell you the goal is to get this yellow line as flat as possible. So that's a principle that you are going to be working on, trying to get the yellow line, the residual noise, as flat as practical without overdoing it, okay? And that's where we're going to be starting from, and that's what we're going to end with. Now, I mean, that's your end goal. Get this yellow flat as practical, and then once you, and that's where when you're adjusting these other things, you'll see sometimes, oh, if I take the tonal up, then I can get rid of some of these little spikies, and sometimes I do them manually, but you know, we don't have time to go over everything. We're almost done here for today, even though we could go over another 20 things, even though we can tune a lot, and you can see how steep I would have made this little thing to get that line working. Questions, Jim? What do we have coming in from others?
Somebody wants to know if this is the regular or the advanced version of RX.
Sure. This is actually the advanced version that I have, although there's no feature that I've used today that is not in standard. Everything I'm using is in standard. There's nothing. If I had gone over, there are some things that are available. And if you're doing it for other people, you know, then the advanced version is great, because people send me problems. If you're dealing with yourself, your goal is to get your room in shape. You use RX to do some basic things and to clean up some things. Your goal over time, though, is to continually adjust your room, and I help people do that so that they don't need as much of this, and you're doing a very light denoising at the end to get it within specs rather than depending on the tool each time. I mean, you can do that, but that's not a best practice. The best practice is your room first, and then go ahead and use the tool where you need to. What else, Jim?
Well, as you said, Don, we're just about out of time, and I got to tell you, on my speakers here, the difference in this audio sample is incredible from what we first heard and what you've done here with this work. It's much cleaner, much better. I think more sessions are in order, don't you?
Well, there's two things. If people take this and share it to others, because if 9 people watch and that's it, then I'm not going to do too many of them. People call me to do them in private, and I teach them directly. So that's fine. Let me turn off that. Stop that there. So here's the thing. If this works for people, go ahead and share it out on the boards, the places that you are, so that other people watch it. And as long as enough people are watching, then it's worth doing. If nobody's watching, then it means that you and me and 3 other people are 7 listeners. That's all that cares about this, and then it's not worth doing. But it's strictly a matter of, are there enough people that want this information? Because, yeah, I've got 400 other examples, and there's other tools, and there's times where I use declick to denoise, and I didn't even go through and do any of the ticks that come up in the high end. There's a whole technique that I use for that, because there's 2 types of noise we'll deal with. Some is this noise that's occurring all throughout a file, and then there's also noise that is occurring in little bits of the file, whether it's mouth noise. We could do an hour or 2 just on mouth noise alone, and the mouth noise is a whole other battle that we all fight against, and there's some great tools in here to deal with that as well. Anything else?
Let me tell you, Don, that Cecilia is telling us, yes, more sessions, please. Lori says, absolutely more. And then we have a question. Can you answer one quick question before you go? Rihanna wants to know, do you prefer to use the denoiser tool over the dialog denoiser tool? What's the difference between the two?
Okay, the dialog denoiser, I'll say that with my narrator voice, is designed, and they know right at the beginning that it's going to be dialogue, where the original denoiser that they had in this was handling music and any audio. So it's a more precise tool, the spectral denoiser. It has more depth to it. But the dialog denoiser can handle an awful lot, and it can handle it in real time. It's very, very fast. So here's what happens. Once your room is adjusted nicely, then you can probably get away with the dialog denoiser to do everything you need to do. In the beginning stages, or if your environment is such that it's a little bit louder than it needs to be, if you need to take out a lot more noise, then I'd be using Spectral for that purpose, because it is a higher end tool, but it takes more CPU power, it takes more time to process, and it's just got a lot more going on. So the dialogue denoiser, like my son, who lives a couple hundred miles away from me, when he narrates, his room is awesome. And because his room, we've got it kind of tricked out, I just use the dialogue denoiser on it very lightly, and it's amazing. So it really depends on your starting audio as to which one you use. If the dialogue denoiser will do it and give you enough clean audio, then use it. It's a great tool. It's an excellent tool, but it does not deal with very tough situations. It could not deal with the examples that we showed here today, in terms of the tough one. Just too much stuff going on. But for a lot of people, that's the only one that they need is the dialogue denoiser. And if you can use it, do use it. Okay? So,
okay,
Jim,
listen, yeah, you're getting encouragement all over the chat board to do this again and have more presentations. So I would plan on more if I were you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the feedback. And like I said, the important thing is to make sure, so if you're in some group, the URL to this will be available. It's the same URL you use to sign in. You can go to that. You can choose the share button. And if you guys share it out, if I share it out, it looks like I'm just promoting me then. So other people need to promote it too. If promote it, if enough people watch it, I'll do these every couple of weeks and help out there. If no one's watching it, if I can help somebody, I do a lot of engineering for a lot of narrators, so I'm happy to help with that stuff. If I can help you with this, see me on the board. Join our Facebook group, which is /audio rescue. Facebook /group/audio rescue. It's in the notes here on YouTube. Most of you know me from someplace on the board, but get in our group, ask questions there. So great talking to you today. There's so much depth, it's hard to get it in a half hour, but we wanted to have a short session. Special thanks to Jim for helping me manage the feed coming in. And so we're going to see you next time, and probably within the next couple of weeks. You have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.